Hi there. Today we're reading Chapter 5, The Woman Who Disappeared by Philip Rouse. And after the reading, I'm going to ask you some questions and you're going to practice your speaking by answering my questions. I woke up with a terrible pain in my head. I was lying on the floor outside the front door of Miss Elaine Garfield's apartment. I looked around. The man with the gun and his red-haired friend had left. I was alone and I had a terrible headache. I got up slowly and felt my head gently to see if there was any blood. There wasn't any blood, but my head was still very painful. I decided to go back to the office and go to bed. There was no sign of the porter at the entrance to the Manson building. I walked out of the door and across to the old grey Chrysler. I drove slowly back to the office. The telephone was ringing when I arrived at the office. I went in quickly and answered it. Samuel speaking. Listen, Samuel, replied the voice. Forget about Elaine Garfield. We hurt you a little in her apartment. If you don't forget all about Elaine Garfield, we'll hurt you a lot more. Who are you? I asked. But there was no answer. The man had put down the telephone. I decided to do what the man had told me. I would forget all about Elaine Garfield for 10 hours. After a good night's sleep, I would look for Elaine Garfield. I would also try to find the man with the gun and his friend Joe. I lay down on the hard low bed and went straight to sleep. I woke up the next morning at 8 o'clock. I felt my head carefully, but it did not hurt so much now. I left the office and went across the street to the cafe where I usually had breakfast. I drank a glass of orange juice, ate some fresh toast, and drank several cups of coffee. I read the morning newspapers. There was a lot of news, but nothing about Miss Elaine Garfield. I looked at my watch, left the cafe, and walked over to the Chrysler. By 9 o'clock, I was outside the title insurance building. At 3 minutes past 9, I was standing outside the door of Meyer & Meyer Attorneys. At 20 past 9, I was still standing outside the door. Nobody had arrived yet to work. At 9:30, the first secretary arrived and, at 18 minutes to 10, I was sitting in Mr. Meyer's office. Well, Mr. Meyer, I said, my name's Samuel and I'm a private detective. I'm pleased to meet you, Mr. Meyer said politely. I was about 55 years old, with a grey suit, grey hair and a grey face. Does Miss Elaine Garfield work here? I asked. Yes, she does, Mr. Meyer said, but she hasn't been to work since last Monday. Why do you want to see Elaine? Her sister has asked me to help find her, I replied. Can you think of anything Elaine said or did which could explain her disappearance? Mr. Meyer scratched his head. No, he said, I'm afraid I can't help you. Who did Elaine work with? I asked. Mr. Meyer looked at me. Why do you say who did Elaine work with and not who does Elaine work with? Elaine's not dead, is she? He asked. I looked straight back at Mr. Meyer. I don't know if Elaine is dead or not, I said. Would you be very sad if she was dead? Yes, of course I would be sad, Mr. Meyer replied angrily. Are you trying to suggest that I know where Elaine is? I smiled. Now don't get excited, Mr. Meyer, I said. Can you tell me the name of anyone who works with Elaine? Anyone who shares a desk with her or works in the same room? Yeah, Mr. Meyer said. That's easy. Elaine shares a room with Susie Graham. I got up. Thank you very much, Mr. Meyer, I said. Where is Susie Graham's office, please? It's along the corridor. said Mr. Meyer. "The third door on the left." I thanked Mr. Meyer again and walked to the door. "Oh, Mr. Samuel," Mr. Meyer said, "I'm sorry that I got angry, but you understand that I don't want—" "Yes, I understand," I interrupted. "You don't want dirty private detectives in your nice, clean office." I walked out of Mr. Meyer's office and banged the door behind me. I walked slowly down the corridor and knocked on the third door on the left. "Come in," said a voice. So I went into the room. "Are you Susie Graham?" I asked. "Yeah," said the girl sitting at the desk. "I'm Susie." I smiled at her. Susie was the kind of girl everyone smiled at. She was small and slim and had a pair of beautiful brown eyes. "What can I do to help you?" Susie asked. I smiled again. "I'd like to ask you some questions, Miss Graham." "Don't call me Miss Graham," the girl said. "You can call me Susie." "Well, Susie," I said, "I would like to ask you some questions about a friend of yours. Her name is Elaine Garfield." Susie stopped smiling. "Yeah, all right," she said, "but I don't want to talk about Elaine here in the office." "Right," I replied. "I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll go out and find a cafe. I'll buy you a cup of coffee and you can tell me about Elaine. All right?" Susie cheered up and looked much happier. "I'd like to have a cup of coffee," she said, "but Mr. Meyer might get angry if I leave the office." "Don't worry about Mr. Meyer," I said with a big smile. "Mr. Meyer and I are great friends." It's time for questions now. Question number 1. Did Samuel see the porter when he was leaving the Manson building? Did Samuel see the porter when he was leaving Manson building? Question number 2. Who called Samuel? Who called Samuel? And what did he want? What did he want? Question number 3. Did Samuel get scared? Did Samuel get scared? Question number 4. Who did he visit next morning? Who Samuel visit next morning? And question number 5. Did Susie tell Samuel anything about Elaine while they were in the office? Did Susie tell anything about Elaine while they were in the office? That's it. If you don't remember anything, or if you don't remember some answers, you need to read again. Thank you for reading with me and for listening to me. Bye-bye.